Periodically, we would run into people who knew my grandmother when they were in high school, and they all told us that they were afraid of her when they were growing up, but that she had an impact on their lives because as children, they didn't appreciate it too much, especially when she was doing the role of the truant officer. They didn't like that because she was making them go to school, and I'm sure a lot of the people who were arrested when those raids were going on, they didn't like that either. But as adults, they all changed, and they were very grateful to the influence that she had on their lives. Some of them said that by her doing her job the way that she did, she turned their lives around.
I had the privilege of living with Mama Horn for 2 years and got a glimpse of how Mama Horn represents. And amazing woman, full of love, but if you needed to be put in check, she had no qualms doing it.
My grandmother, Mary Horn, was the first black policewoman in Oklahoma.
Mary Beulah Marsh was born on November 14, 1897. The Marsh family moved to Tulsa, Oklahoma in 1917. Following their arrival, Mary's father opened a modest barbecue restaurant on Tulsa's north side.
It's my understanding that they originated from Virginia. I'm not sure of the city, but they moved to Texas. And at some point in their lives, they decided that they would move to Tulsa, Oklahoma.
In 1921, during the Tulsa race riot, along with all the houses in the neighborhood, the restaurant was burned to the ground.
This was a black woman who, in her early 20s, went through the Tulsa race riot. And the Tulsa race riot wasn't a one-time phenomenon across the country. That was dropping in Rosewood. It was dropping all over the country at that time. As a matter of fact, historian James Loewen, author of Lies My Teacher Told Me, calls the period of 1897 to 1919 the nadir of race relations in America, the height of race relations.
When the race riot started, the people involved in the race riot, the white people, went to my grandmother's house, went in the house. Nobody was there but my grandmother and her 2 children, and the people just took the house over. They went all over the house, taking out whatever it was that they were interested in having. And fortunately for us, they did not do any injury to my mother, my aunt, or my grandmother. At that particular time, my grandmother had 2 children. She ultimately got married again. That marriage didn't last too long because the man was abusive. She belonged to the Methodist Church at that time, and she decided to go and talk to the minister about her marriage. And when she went there, the minister told her that as a wife, she needed to accept whatever was going on in the home. So my grandmother, being my grandmother, she immediately left that church and she became Catholic, a religion that we followed all through our lives. She worked in the home of white people, washing their clothes, cleaning their homes, and she told me when I was a little girl that when she worked there, she would be down in the basement, standing in water sometime, washing their clothes on rub boards, and she prayed all the time that God would take her out of those basements. In the meantime, she was a very devout Catholic, and she was very close to the man who happened to be the priest at that time, Father Bradley. Father Bradley was a very wealthy man, was very well connected to the people in power in Tulsa. And at one point, they were looking for a female police person. And they had the names of some white women who they were looking at. Father Bradley knew that they were going to hire someone, and he suggested that they look at my grandmother. He told the woman who was in charge, who would be making the decision, that he thought she would do well because my grandmother had what at the time was considered a high school education. She had only gone to the 8th grade. The other women had some forms of college, and he told the woman who was in charge, who would be making the decision of who would be hired, that if she hired the women with the degrees, they would come on the job telling her what she needed to do. They would not be readily interested in following her orders, but that if she hired my grandmother would come in and do everything that the woman wanted her to do. and it turned out that the woman decided to pick my grandmother.
In 1939, at the age of 42, Mary took a 3-day exam for the Tulsa Police Department. On the 3rd day, Mary, in spite of her race, was told she had been selected. She was sworn in on September 23, 1939, as Tulsa's first African-American female police officer.
When she first started, she was a juvenile officer, and then as time went on, they had her working with the men when they would go on raids for these nightclubs and things that they had.
As an active member of Tulsa's Vice Squad, Mary led detectives on raids of whiskey dens, where underage girls mingled illegally with older men. She made rounds of taverns, red light districts, alleys, and bawdy houses until the early morning hours. In 1941, Mary and 2 other female officers arrested 53 persons for sex-related offenses.
Then she started bringing children home sometime when they didn't have parents or when the parents had been arrested.
Her reform projects included young girls who tried to use prostitution as a ticket out of poverty. Later, she helped to establish a residence for them in a clubhouse furnished by the Federal Colored Women's Club. As an officer, Mary worked 8 hours a day, 6 days a week, while attending law school at night. Some of Mary's friends discouraged her, saying at age 42, she was too old to be a police officer. Mary disagreed with their opinion, saying, "With a clean heart and right mind, I knew I could make it on my own." She was often referred to as a crack shot. The first time she went to the police target range to practice, Mary fired bullseye the first dozen shots. Mary was quoted in an article in the Tulsa Tribune as saying, "I hadn't shot a gun once in my life, but I wasn't afraid to try." In May 1958, a citizens group awarded Mary Officer of the Year for her work in a rape case involving a 6-year-old girl as the victim. She interviewed dozens of people before one told her a 21-year-old man was seen playing with the child while the girl's mother was away. Mary questioned the suspect and obtained a confession. The citation for the award stated, "The hours of painstaking questioning of the victim, plus the skillful interrogation of the 21-year-old suspect were considered outstanding police work." After 12 years of regular police work, Mary was assigned to work with juvenile delinquents and the court. On one occasion, when a young black boy was brought to the juvenile bureau because he had been out of school for 5 weeks, she discovered it was because the boy only had rags to wear. Mary contacted the Tulsa YMCA and arranged for them to purchase the child a complete outfit of clothes. Overjoyed, the boy returned to school. Mary retired in 1962 after 23 years with the Tulsa Police Department. Police and Fire Commissioner Bernie Guerin praised Mary, stating, "She has been a dedicated and devoted policewoman and mother, and remains as warm and kind a person as the day I first met her." Chief of Police Jack Purdy issued the following statement to the press: "I hate to see her leave. We have become very dependent on her work with the young, and she has been a generous person." Mac Polk, who served with her, commented, "She was one of the best. They don't come any better." In a news article from 1985, Mary was quoted as saying, "I'm still searching for something to do with my life. I don't know why I've lived so long or what else God wants of me. I love everybody, and it doesn't make a difference to me what their race is. I love them all the same." Mary Beulah Horn passed away on April 11, 1987, at the age of 89. In 2017, Mary Horn was inducted into the Oklahoma Law Enforcement Hall of Fame, and in 2018, she received a Commendation Honor Award from the Oklahoma State Senate.
So Mama Horn is, I'm a alpha member of Alpha Phi Alpha. She's our alpha. She's the first. She was the game changer for the family. And fortunately for Tulsa, Oklahoma, she was larger than that, because the role she played within our family, she extrapolated across the community as a matriarch and a leader. But Mama Horn, if you had a pantheon of empowered, trend-setting black women, if we had that, our own Mount Rushmore for that, I can make a strong, compelling argument that Mama Horn would be one of the 4.